Oh my God. Candace Owens, Glenn Beck, and Bill O'Reilly.
Two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
There was no imminent threat to the United States when Trump made this decision to do what Bibi wanted. And I want to be clear here. This was not Trump's decision. It was Bibi Netanyahu's decision.
Wow.
And that is the reason that he did it. And we're very aware that Israel is dictating our foreign policy, and we would now like that to stop.
He hates nuclear war. He hates regular war.
Yeah.
And I think he just...
You seem to disagree with Hassan, saying Kamala would have also bombed Iran. So I'm curious what you think the Dems would have done in this scenario. Was bombing Iran even a bad decision? At this point, it seems to work out. Everything would be a bit different now. Like, the Republican approach to Iran has kind of been unhinged. Is it possible that they still would have bombed Iran with Kamala? I mean, it is possible, but the situation would not be completely the same. It's stupid to just have like such a one-dimensional view. But I mean, when nobody understands the politics or gives a about any of it, then it's whatever, I guess.
I think he's not been inconsistent in the sense that in his first term, he wasn't a pacifist. You know, he killed General Soleimani. He killed Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, and went after them.
He wasn't a pacifist. No new wars, no new wars, no new wars. Let's see how many neo-Nazi conspiracies Candace Owens can get through. Maybe she's shifted over the past few months. I don't know.
Ferociously, he attacked Syria when they killed American troops. He dropped a massive bomb in Afghanistan. It wasn't like he never deployed the American military. And again, here, what he would argue, and has been arguing, is he's not declared war on anybody. What he's done is very specifically target Iran's nuclear capability because of latest reports coming out which said they had taken the enrichment of their uranium stocks from 3.5% to 60%, and that therefore the leap to weaponization was moving at a pace that couldn't be tolerated. I've got to say, I kind of agree. Now, if he suddenly commits troops on the ground, then that becomes a different thing altogether. But even when Trump talked about regime change, I think he...
How can Destiny shit on Hassan and others for chair react when he literally does chair react all the time, genuinely? When have you ever seen me shit on people for chair react? I generally don't. I make fun of Hassan for random stuff, but I'm not like super bought into the IP react memes or whatever bullshit. Like, if you want to talk about like intellectual property violations, if I'm here or not, if Piers Morgan Uncensored, the YouTube channel, were to sue me, whether I'm here commenting on this or not, it's probably not a case I would win for fair use. But obsession over fair use stuff is not usually something I talk about much at all. I don't really care that much about it.
He meant from within, as we saw in Syria in December, where the people themselves rise up. And if that was to happen, why would that be a bad thing?
Okay, so you're asking a lot of questions here. So first and foremost, the idea that you have to formally declare war on like a piece of paper in order for war to happen is a little bit ridiculous. I mean, he dropped bombs. He dropped bombs in Iran. So yes, we are a part of this war, whether we like it or not.
This is such a reductionist, stupid take, but...
Iran is now speaking and saying that they're going to shut down the Hormuz Strait. There's going to be impact on oil.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that when the main victim of doing that would be Iran? I mean, 50% of China, of the traffic of stuff through there is for China, which is one of their allies.
Don't care, not my business. The point that I'm making here is that to make the assumption that you can just drop bombs on a country and then say, well, you know what, we didn't formally declare war is patently ridiculous. I think that is just patently ridiculous.
What about when he killed General Soleimani, one of Iran's top managers?
But yeah, what about when he bombed Syria?
An assassination, a strike, and that, of course, came with some risk. It's a little bit different to be flying out B-6 bombers.
Okay, what about the strike in Syria? Please, Piers, have this one, the strike in Syria.
Bombers in the middle of the night and dropping bombs at the behest of Bibi Netanyahu, which brings me to the second point. The reason that America wants a regime change in Iran is because Bibi Netanyahu is demanding it, and that answers the question as to why there
you go. We got the Zog. Do you think they'll bring up that clean break memo or whatever?
Is this split in the MAGA movement? What we are seeing right now is the infiltration of Israel first people, the neocons, people who have always wanted never-ending wars, and the people who have recognized that following Israel's foreign policy initiatives has led to America being on the decline. And so that's where I stand. I am with
America's declined right now just because of Israel. True.
The MAGA people who grew up, I call us Generation 9/11, who were told that America was going to be rendered safer, cleaner. All we had to do was agree to go to, well, ironically, war with Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction. It's all of the same rhetoric dating back to 9/11, all of the same tactics trying to smear people who are against this war as supporting jihadists. It is not my business to affect a regime change in Iran. It's simply not our business. It doesn't impact us one way or the other. And we also are completely done with the idea that with this decades-long idea that we're doing it to spread democracy because we believe in international liberalism. There was no imminent threat.
Sometimes the talking points are ripped from like 2003. Like who? Or maybe people have said and I've missed it. Is anybody talking about spreading democracy in Iran? Is Is that even a talking point right now, or is this coming from the Iraq war trauma that people have?
To the United States when Trump made this decision to do what Bibi wanted. And I want to be clear here. This was not Trump's decision. It was Bibi Netanyahu's decision. And that is the reason that he did it. And we're very aware that Israel is dictating our foreign policy, and we would now like that to stop.
Okay,
True.
but you wouldn't disagree, presumably, that Iran has been the main sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East through the Houthis, through Hezbollah, through Hamas. I mean, that's widely accepted and recognized. They've
Pivot to America and Israel. Always pivot. Always pivot. Always pivot to America and Israel.
I don't think it's widely accepted. No, that's just kind of
Really? You don't think they
Israel
have?
has been a terrorist state.
Yes.
Israel right now
Yes.
is imparting a genocide and a Holocaust on the Gazan people.
Yes. Destiny, no meme. What is war then? What features must be present for it to be a war versus a special operation? And does that definition match what the average American's definition of war is? Yes. Nobody believes that this is a war. That's a term that you use when you're trying to get like all the moral normative value on your side of the argument. A war is when we start deploying soldiers and we have like extended troops on the ground in some region for some major military operation. No American citizen genuinely feels like this bombing mission was the same as the war in Iraq or Afghanistan, where we had troops on the ground for extended periods of time. Now, if you want to call this a war or whatever, that's fine, but you deserve to lose all of the normative value that you get from ordinarily being horrified by wars and our involvement, because it is a far, far, far different thing.
So I'm really
Not
over
to
this.
say that like bombing people is an act of war. It certainly is, or it's a aggressive thing, of course. But to call it like a war, like the same way that like Iraq was a war or the Vietnam War was a war, this is fucking stupid. Virtue signaling, cringe.
Idea like somehow Israel has the moral high ground and we have to get behind them.
I didn't say
because we
that.
got to go after the bad
I
guys.
wasn't saying that.
We have.
No, hang on. Look, we can come to Gaza, where I think we'll reach agreement about what Israel's government's been doing there in the last few months.
But it's relevant. If you're going to call Iranians terrorists, if they right now had an open concentration camp where they were mass killing their own people, we would all be saying this is ridiculous. So it's rich to me that people are concerned.
Wait, of who? Wait.
Agreement about what Israel's government's been doing there in the last few months.
But it's relevant. If you're going to call Iranians terrorists, if they right now had an open concentration camp where they were mass killing their own people, we would all be saying this is ridiculous. So it's rich to me that people are concerned.
Well, I mean, like, how long was this happening in Syria? How long was this happening in Yemen? I mean, it seems like nobody gave a fuck, right?
About Iran having nukes, but I'm concerned about Israel, who won't even admit that they have nukes, having nukes, while at the same time, they are executing a genocide and a Holocaust in Gaza that the world is watching. So who's the bigger terrorist is the question today. I would say, as an American, that if we're going to get behind a regime change...
Yes, there we go. Israel and America, bigger terrorists. Good pivot. Good pivot. At Destiny, totally semantics. Deconstruct it all, Tiny. You're such a liar. You're so disingenuous. I don't know if you guys can even tell. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? Maybe. It
should be in Israel first. So that would be my position. I think the position of a lot of people who are waking up to the fact that Zionism has brought us nothing but grief in America. Can you name one positive thing that Zionists have contributed to America? That us fighting these perpetual wars on behalf of Zionism has contributed to America?
But can you also recognize that Israel, placed where it is, as a tiny thumbprint in the middle of a region where you have massive countries full of a lot of people that want to wish them harm, and in the case of the terror groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, actually want to get rid of Israel and all Israelis altogether, can you accept that if you have a huge nation like Iran with 90 million people...
Dude, I wish I wouldn't have wasted my time. We should have studied programming. Why did the new video get taken out? I think they used too much content. I think Penguin wanted it to be private for a while. These conversations are so boring. It's like always dancing around the issue. Nobody ever gets to the actual issue. There's no real conversation. This is so autistic. I hate these.
And they are facilitating the terror groups to that purpose, that Iran has to defend itself. Now, I would not disagree with you about what has been going on in Gaza in the last few months. I've been very vocal in my criticism of that. Nor do I disagree, by the way, that it wouldn't help Israel if they did have regime change and Netanyahu wasn't prime minister anymore. So on those points, I think we have agreement. But I come back to the fact that the reason Trump has done this, I think, is that he has for a long time said Iran...
No one will ever engage on any of the factual points. The Middle East is... maybe the Middle East... Oh, no, fuck, because I went there. I was going to say, if I hadn't gone to Israel, I don't even know if the Middle East is real. I think it's just like a fantasy land that's created for everybody to kind of ship their own political viewpoints and agendas like into. Like you kind of just like use these countries. Like remember when Muslim Stan said that they wanted to rape all American girls, and then remember when Capital Jewestein bombed the... It's just a region that exists for you to ship whatever retarded political ideology you have. It's so fucking boring.
Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. I think he's absolutely right to believe that would be a pretty terrifying escalation.
Israel has a nuclear bomb. Pivot again to Israel having a nuke.
The power of a country that's been so wedded to terrorism in the region. And I think he took the action for that reason. So I don't really agree that he's only doing it because Bibi Netanyahu wants him to go along and do it. I think he's doing it because he believes it's in America's strategic interest that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon.
It is not in America's strategic interest. There was no imminent threat. He could have taken this to Congress and he could have allowed the people's representatives to vote on whether or not
nobody does
it was
that.
in the American people.
No president in living memory has, with almost zero exceptions.
Didn't Obama do that? Wasn't that why he didn't do anything to enforce the red line? Because he couldn't get support from Congress to doing it? afterwards when he says nobody's done that. I'd have to go back and look that up, but
has bothered to get congressional pre-approval for military strikes. We know that. You know that.
Yeah, we know that. And that's not okay. By the way, that's not okay.
Obama
That's
did
an
more
argument.
strikes than anybody, right?
Yes,
I mean, Obama never asked anybody for
I'm an Obama
permission.
supporter.
Obama red line. Fuck, it's been so long. I don't remember. The authorization for the use of military force against the government of Syria to respond to the use of chemical weapons is a United States Senate joint resolution that would have authorized President Barack Obama to use the American military to intervene in the ongoing Syrian civil war. The bill was filed by Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid on September 6, 2013, in a specially scheduled pro forma Senate session that took place on the last week of the August recess. The bill would have authorized only 60 days of military action with the possibility of a one-time extension of 30 days. However, this bill never received a floor vote in either the House or the Senate. So I think Obama did try to get congressional approval for intervention. And then they didn't give it to him. And then he didn't. So it's kind of funny that he uses Obama as an excuse here, but okay.
Yeah, that doesn't make it okay. By the way, like that argument, just so we're clear, saying, well, we've been doing it wrong forever, so we should just keep doing it wrong is not an argument that's right.
I don't disagree with you about that.
Okay, so I disagree with Obama doing it. I disagree with Trump doing it.
Enough.
And especially when what we're talking about is what could rise to be a nuclear war, right? We should have done things the right way. And he had indicated that he was going to wait 2 weeks, and then he didn't wait 2 weeks because Bibi Netanyahu, at least according to the Israeli press, if you believe it, said, we're not waiting 2 weeks, we want this done immediately. But I will say, you are correct. He's not just doing this because Bibi Netanyahu demands it. He's also doing it because Miriam...
Is this argument like saying my neighbor has a gun, so I should, even though I didn't pass a background check? No, it's like somebody's like, this guy has a gun and this guy's going to get a gun. What should we do about it? And then you're saying like, okay, well, in Lord of the Rings, like the Two Towers, it doesn't make sense that horses weren't getting stabbed more by orcs. It's just like, it's just a vector to talk about other retarded shit. Like I said, the conversation should begin with, if Iran has nuclear weapons, is the United States better or worse off? And then go from there. That would be the start of the conversation. All of this other random pivoting bullshit is for subhuman disgusting fucks like Candace to push her neo-Nazi bullshit, subhuman disgusting fucks like Glenn Beck to push his, I don't know, whatever the fuck he's on, or subhuman disgusting fucks like Bill O'Reilly to push whatever shit he's on. I don't know where these two are at politically right now. If Bill O'Reilly is still a stock neocon, and if Glenn Beck has gone, I think he's gone full off on the delusional conspiracy bandwagon, but we'll see, I guess, when he comes in. I don't know.
Adelson demands it. He took $100 million from Miriam Adelson. It was very clear what she wanted. She was clear that she wanted to annex the West Bank.
Adelson is that big donor to Trump's campaign who's Jewish, so of course it's all Zog shit, Zionist-owned or Zionist-occupied government.
So there was an imperialist plan that was put into place. And unfortunately, when you do a deal with the devil, you're going to have to eventually deliver the pound of flesh. And that is what Trump is doing, in my opinion. And more evidence of that is the fact when he tweeted that there could be a Trump hotel in Gaza. I mean, that was truly...
Where's good political conversations at? Nowhere right now. Not about this shit. Probably not anywhere. Like, nobody wants them. The people are just like here to jerk off about retarded shit. So online content, alternative media is a fucking wasteland for political conversation.
In my opinion, the most inhumane thing he's ever tweeted.
Well, I think it was pretty clear. I think what he was doing there was pretty clear. He's saying he wants a better life for Palestinian people, a life where they have beaches,
well, when you
and they
pair
have
that
hotels,
with Jared
and they have golf
Kushner and
courses.
Jared Kushner's private equity firm and their ties to what's happening in Israel and Jared Kushner being on camera shortly after October 7th saying, wow, that property could be worth a lot of money, it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. It makes Americans a little bit uncomfortable. Now, you've asked me to come onto your show to explain to you how the now very fractured MAGA movement is feeling, and I'm telling you that, right?
No, it's really, honestly,
I
find the split in the conservative movement in America genuinely fascinating because it really
it's
is a genuine schism now.
Yeah, there's a genuine schism, and it's only going one direction. And by the way, we shouldn't even call this a schism because trying to dress this up and delude us into believing that the MAGA movement is what has Meghan McCain cheering, John Bolton cheering, has Mark Levin cheering, the literal
all of the neocon cheerleaders, and you know if they're on one side, it must be a bad idea.
Of the Never Trump movement are saying this is real MAGA. Yeah, we're not going to be that delusional.
You're on the same side as Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. How do you feel about that?
You're asking about the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement has always been a movement that explicitly did not want to keep involving our sons and daughters in the Middle East. So we have not changed that.
Then why were you okay with the Syrian strikes? Why were you okay with the assassination of Soleimani? Like, why were you okay with all of the drone strikes in Yemen?
Position. If AOC was always anti-war, then she should have thrown on a red hat in 2020 and in 2015 and joined the MAGA movement. That would have been fantastic.
But are you saying America shouldn't?
When was AOC first elected to Congress? Was that long ago? It might have been 2015. Assumed office 2019. Is that when she was first in office? 2015? Or did she say 2018?
War, then she should have thrown on a red hat in 2020 and in 2015 and joined.
2015.
The MAGA movement. That would have been fantastic.
But are you saying America should never use any military
They're on the same side
action?
as Greta Thunberg when it comes to the Palestinians
Right,
being
but are you saying,
murdered
Candace,
every
are
day?
you saying,
I am aligned.
Okay, but are you saying that America should never use any military action then?
No, I'm not saying America can never use any military action. In fact, what I said earlier was I could get behind a regime change in Israel because I think it would fix a lot of issues that are happening and that has been happening to America over time. Like
But
I said,
why wouldn't
America
you want it in
has
Iran? I
been
mean,
on the decline.
I'm reading an Amnesty International report from 2024.
Because Iran is
Hang
not
on.
negatively impacting. I'm answering your question because Iran's regime is not negatively impacting America on a day-to-day basis. And
How does Iran represent a threat to any U.S. allies in the region? At least get her to say, because her actual point is that we shouldn't have any allies in the region, Saudi Arabia or Israel. But then at least you can progress the conversation from there, I guess.
But when the
This
leader of
radical-
Iran says death to America, why doesn't that concern you?
okay, that's a chant. And by the way, I want to be very clear.
That's a chant.
Why are they chanting death to America?
Oh, we need to look into the reasons why. Why did people try to assassinate Trump? I don't know. Oh, now we got to look at the reasons why. Oh, we're so kind and understanding.
Why are they chanting that? That's kind of a random thing. Like, I know
Because they want Americans dead?
But why are they specifically chanting as opposed to saying, I don't know, death to China or death to Russia? What is it specifically
Well, they
about
say
America?
death to America, death to Israel, death to the United Kingdom, actually.
Oh, okay.
Death to pretty much
maybe
anyone that wants to
because,
stand up to them.
could it have something to do with our
Could it have something to do with the fact that we interfere in the Middle East?
our actions in the Middle East is why I'm saying that we need a change in foreign policy. It maybe has something to do with just like killing 1 million Iraqi civilians, okay?
A million.
Because Bibi Netanyahu.
A million. I think Noam Chomsky was the one who popularized the bullshit 500,000 civilian number. Now it's up to 1 million. How many millions of people have we killed in Iraq?
Who got on a congressional stage and said there are weapons of mass destruction, and we took that to the bank, and there actually were no weapons of mass destruction, so we just killed 1 million. It could have something, I could be crazy, it could have something to do with our actions in the Middle East. The fact that we have 2,000 troops stationed in Syria right now under the guise of saying that we're fighting ISIS, while at the same time we know that Bibi Netanyahu funded the Al-Qaeda adjacent fronts because he wanted to overthrow Syria, and they, again, expand their borders, immediately take on territory, and sell us absolute nonsense. We're talking about funding Hamas. Bibi Netanyahu funded Hamas. There's footage of Bibi Netanyahu saying this stuff on camera.
Oh my
so it's
God.
just so ridiculous to me to pretend that they're in some predicament, that they may be eradicated soon, which is why they have to keep funding all of these terrorist groups and then pretend that they're victims of terror, when in fact they are people that are imparting it worldwide.
Wow.
You know, I just think that, like I said, Generation 9/11 has grown up, and I think that our eyes are very clear here, and we recognize that our relationship with Israel has become increasingly problematic, and it always was problematic. So I'll again ask the questions, Piers. I'm asking you because we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
Name something positive that our Zionist APAC foreign policy has brought to America.
Well,
Zionist APAC foreign policy based.
I think the positive side of, if you want an answer about that, is that America has been Israel's steadfast ally because it recognizes as a country that Israel has been under an almost unique, multifaceted threat on its border for a very long time from people that want to destroy it. And you know that you may not see that as.
Do you think that Candace believes what she says? No, I think Candace is an evil person. I don't think she believes almost anything that she says. She lands onto too much conspiracy stuff, like at too much of an opportune time. She's too much of a parasite, of a leech to everything around her. She did the same when she got into Kanye West's ear. I think that she's just a demonic, evil human being, like one of the most evil human beings. I think she's uniquely evil.
A benefit, but Israel has been very supportive to the United States in many ways, right? So why shouldn't
I just
America?
want something concrete that has been benefit. Like, we got better in America in this way. Like, just name something. Gas prices, just something that the average American can relate to.
I mean, we jointly developed the Iron Dome thing. We ensure like free trade through the Suez Canal, right, as part of the Egyptian-Israel cooperation. We don't ever have to worry about that, except for the Houthis, I guess. We strengthen relationships with OPEC, or with some of OPEC, with allies in the region and the Gulf states. I mean, but all of these things are like less tangential. But it's hard. But you could run this argument with everybody, although they'd agree. You're like, well, what do we get for our alliance with the EU? Give me something concrete. I don't know, but like preferential trade. Well, they would trade with us. Like, truly, you could use this argument with basically every single country. Like, what do we get for this? I mean, like, you're not gonna be able to. It's not like they, cut us, like, give us an allowance or something. But.
Well, you're not going to have a correlation between Zionism and gas prices in America. Of course, you're not.
No, I'm just
obviously
giving an example to just tell me one thing.
tangible benefits.
What your argument here is like, well, you get a pat on the back and you can say that you helped this country, which was formed in 1948 by pretending to be refugees, if you will, and being invited into the homes of Palestinians.
What a wild retelling of that story. Okay.
Horrific story.
Well, they weren't
of what
pretending to be
happened.
refugees. They were people fleeing a Holocaust.
Let's be clear. Let me finish my statement.
What do you mean
When I say
pretending to be refugees?
Let me finish my statement. When I say pretending to be refugees and being invited into the home, you would think that these people were helpless and were going to be grateful to the people that hosted them. People like Muhammad Hadid, Bella Hadid and Gigi Hadid's father, who was an infant at this time in his mother's arms. She had just given birth. They had invited these refugees because of the goodness of their heart. And then one day they return home and their doors are locked and they are told that if you try to enter, you are going to be shot and killed. That is the reality of how Israel was established as a state. Okay, that is not a stain that you can wipe from history. Most Americans growing up actually believe what happened was that, okay, it was a little messy. That's what happens after wars. Borders get changed. But at the very least, they were given money. I mean, you've lived here for hundreds of years. Here's money for your property. No, that's not what happened. They were forced out of their homes at gunpoint.
Listen,
and it's wrong. So we get to be the
but it was
nation.
also wrong.
Nice based.
Back, according to you, the thing that America does, let me finish. I'm going to let you finish. It's your show. We can, but let me finish. But your argument is that what we get to be is that nation that keeps supporting it as they continue to move their borders in this way. Now we're seeing that incursion into Gaza, and we are certainly going to see it by the end of this administration in the West Bank, because like I said, that is why Miriam Adelson gave Trump $100 million.
Look, as you know, I oppose what the Israeli government is doing now in Gaza. I oppose the expansion of settlements on the West Bank. I think all of that is completely wrong. I do think America supports Israel because it remains the only democracy in the Middle East, and that's an important...
They're not a democracy. Stop saying that, Piers. You know better.
Well, they have elections.
It's not a democracy.
They are a democracy. I don't know what... Oh, they're not a democracy, but okay.
Elections.
But who gets to vote in those elections? Do the Gazans get to vote in that election?
Well, Gaza is not formally part of the country of Israel, right? That doesn't make it not a democracy, though. I mean...
The Israelis get to vote in Israel, obviously.
Okay, so you're basically saying America had a democracy, when we had
Israel
laws that said black Americans couldn't, black Americans...
Well, no, because black Americans weren't... like, they didn't have... Black Americans were in U.S. states and didn't have citizenship and couldn't get citizenship in U.S. states and couldn't even vote when they were parts of those U.S. states. Were they considered citizens? No, they must not have been when they were just property. I don't know what the legal filing of them would have been. This is such a stupid comparison. If you want a better comparison, honestly, you should ask her, how do you feel about like DC and Puerto Rico? Shouldn't they have votes that matter? Shouldn't they get representation in Congress? Aren't these guys, like, is the United States not a democracy because DC doesn't have any representation? Because Puerto Rico doesn't have any representation? That would be an interesting question, but...
Basically saying America had a democracy, when we had
Israel
laws that said black Americans...
Also, by the way, not to be mean, I don't know why I'm saying that. Fuck, I don't give a fuck. Like, yes, America did have a democracy. Even when we had slavery, we still had a democracy. Like, was it perfect? No. Were there some people who were disenfranchised with their vote? Yes. But like, even before women's suffrage, we still had a democracy. What form of government do we have if it wasn't a democracy? What would you call it? What?
No, Israel moved out. It is indisputable that Israel moved out of Gaza in 2005, and there was an election, and Hamas got elected. Right now,
I agree
because I agree with you. I agree with you.
Netanyahu was on camera saying that they were going to fund Hamas into power, so they orchestrated that because they wanted to push the solution.
I agree with you that Netanyahu wanted to cause a split between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. It was divided.
Do people think Piers giving these people charity leads to these meaningless conversations? Most people don't think these conversations are meaningless. They like watching it. It's blood sports. It's good shit. Like, actual conversations on the topics are, you would have to actually do some research and reading, and none of these people will do it. And if you push them too much to have a real conversation, then they'll just never go on your show.
Divide and rule. It was a catastrophically bad strategy, and it led to what happened on October the 7th over a 20-year period. There's no doubt it was a terrible thing that Netanyahu did. One of the many reasons I think he should go. But there was no doubt that the Israelis pulled out of Gaza and allowed them to have elections, and they elected Hamas, and the rest has been disastrous history.
Because the Israelis funded, because Bibi Netanyahu, they funded Hamas.
I don't disagree with you.
That's why they elected Hamas initially? That's not true, by the way. But okay, that's a nice lie. Okay. What does she think that Qatar funding thing, that statement was made, or with reference to what time period? My last video got privated because they're reworking it. I think Pangberg wanted to post a video on that first, so it got privated because I think they're figuring out what they have to do with that. I don't know.
But they still had elections.
So it's like we rigged an election, but look what the election results show is that they wanted to put Hamas into power. And so when we talk about who is funding these terrorists, the answer is Bibi Netanyahu. And I don't want to get into his corruption trials, but every single person watching this right now should go pursue the documentary, The Bibi Files, because it is absolutely stunning.
I believe one of the reasons. I believe one of the reasons. Let me answer the
question, because you still haven't given me anything other than, like, you guys get a pat on the back for supporting this created nation in the Middle East. I also just like to say all of the bad things that we have gotten because of our continued relation.
Like 9/11, that was by the Jews. War in Iraq, Libya, Iran, Syria. Am I missing anything?
Okay.
With Israel. First and foremost, the open borders. And you can relate to this. People in the UK, they just can't see.
Oh, shit. I forgot. Not just Israel, but the Jews in the US as well. Because we believe in both Jews are fucking us over. Damn.
You connect the dots.
All right.
Oh my gosh, what's happening here? No, but I want to say this, okay? We don't understand where all these refugees are coming from. Oh my God, where are all these refugees coming from? Who's funding them coming over into these borders? Well, this is what you get when you keep supporting these nonstop wars, when you keep bombing where these people live. And it's not even just a conspiracy.
Does she mean refugees in Europe, or does she think that like refugees are fleeing to the United States from the Middle East, or from?
By the way, if you're like, oh well,
actually, you're wrong about it.
Yes, I think. Oh, okay.
Because the vast majority of people coming into the UK illegally are coming from war-torn countries in the Middle East. They're actually economic migrants. So that's not true.
Okay, but let's connect that. Let's connect that. When you say economic migrants, are we talking about, like,
people who literally want to come to the UK for a better life?
And when Gaddafi was heading up Libya and the country was on the up and up, and he was working with the United Nations.
True, Gaddafi, the loved democratic leader, the loved leader who definitely wasn't murdering his own people and potentially gearing up to start mass killing people and was locking up political opponents and claiming that there was LSD and Pepsi or whatever, and it was brainwashing his population. Definitely that guy. That was a cool dude for sure.
Then all of a sudden he warned that if you collapse Libya and turn it into a place where refugees are escaping, that this is going to be your problem, Europe. He warned that. So then it actually happened, and now we're just calling them economic migrants. We're going to pretend
I'm not
that we had
talking
nothing
about
to
people
do.
coming from Libya.
Okay, where are you speaking about?
Well, for example, I think it was last year, a third of all the people who came into the UK on the border on the small boats illegally, it turned out were young economic migrant males from Albania, which last time I checked, we hadn't invaded. So look, let me pull you back to something you said, which has caused a lot of controversy, which is this issue of dishonorable discharge. Just take a listen.
I do believe that if war in Iran is on the agenda, and that appears so, get dishonorably discharged. Who cares? Who cares? Why should you go die in a foreign land? You now have the benefit of 2020. You can think about those men and those women who died because they were pitched that they were serving their country because there were weapons of mass destruction, right? They were serving their country because the Taliban, they were serving their country, whatever, and these people gave up their lives. And ask yourselves for what?
For the
and the
Jews.
answer to that question is for the elites. They're like toy soldiers.
Israel.
When you said that, were you aware of the repercussions if people dishonorably discharged?
So just to put this into context, this is like the Q&A, live Q&A portion at the end of my show. And being facetious, but also being completely honest, that they should begin to consider, and that was somebody asking, what should we do? Like, should we leave the military? Because they also
do you regret
are
saying
recognizing that? No, I don't regret saying that. I don't
But you know
regret
the
having people
repercussions if you
actually
do
think
discharge
about-
dishonorably.
Okay, well, I would imagine that the people that are in the military who were going to, if they were going to listen to my podcast and they were going to dishonorably discharge, that they would know the consequences. So it's completely ridiculous. And again, we see this over and over again where people can't answer the broader questions. They try to suddenly peg in, well, you said this one thing. No, the broader conversation we are having.
It's not a small thing.
No,
to
let me
suggest-
finish. Let me finish. Let me finish.
You're encouraging
Pierce,
US
let me
servicemen and
finish.
women
You ask
to
a question,
dishonorably
you
discharge.
play a clip, and I'm trying to answer it. You know, you can't do that. You ask a question.
You're trying to
you play
downplay
the clip,
it.
And I'm responding. No, I am. No, you're trying to upplay is what the issue is. This is
I'm just
exactly.
repeating what you said.
You're not. You're playing what I said, and I'm responding to it and telling you that the broader piece of that conversation, when you have troops that are now asking that question, is they are recognizing that America is in steep decline, that our military comes back and they are treated like dirt. That a lot of these men, and we're talking about decades, white American males come back and they're told that they're racist and they're treated like crap, that they're white supremacists, that they have a
The
different.
wokes. Oh God. The real problem with the Iraq War was that when these soldiers came back from Iraq, they were attacked by the wokies. They came back from Iraq and they were suddenly told that they had to accept transgenderism. Oh no.
Vision for this country. So why are they dying in these overseas wars for Bibi Netanyahu? Okay, and let me again try to answer that question that I asked you at the beginning, which is what has Zionism won
No, I'm
America?
not
What
gonna
have
keep
these
coming back to the
never-ending-
same thing.
No, let me finish. Why won't you let me answer that? Why won't
You
you
can
let
answer
me
if you
actually
want
say
to.
what people are recognizing? You come back and there are open borders, and you're told that you are racist. Okay, you come back and you're told that you are racist if you don't want open borders. Meanwhile, you're sent overseas to defend Israel's borders. It's a nonsense. And who's funding these open borders? According to Barry Weiss, and I quote, Barry Weiss said this verbatim: "The Jewish connection to the refugee is not a conspiracy. That's something that we are very proud of." And she was referencing the organization HIAS, and she says explicitly, which she said what was started by them in the 1880s, which includes immigrants that have come in, like Sergey Brin. They are still the organization that's operating at our border right now. Okay, that is problematic. That we have open borders while we.
The 1880s was pushing for open migration into the United States? Wait, what?
Explicitly, which she said what was started by them in the 1880s, which includes immigrants that have come in, like Sergey Brin. They are still
Based. Okay.
the organization that's operating at our border right now. Okay, that is problematic. That we have open borders while we continually and routinely are told that we have to defend somebody else's borders. Okay, and again, these never-ending wars in the Middle East at the behest of Israel. Bibi Netanyahu is the one that called for Americans to invade Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, and
There
now
it
Iran,
is.
and we've done
Yes.
it. We're told Israel can defend itself. Okay, so but why do we have currently 2,000 troops that are in Syria under the guise of fighting ISIS? And like I said, we know Israel themselves fund terror-adjacent militants like they did to overthrow Assad. And we're done with the BS of, okay, well, they weren't really involved Israel in
Does Piers know she's like a full-on neo-Nazi? I wonder if he is aware of all this. Who knows? I don't know.
Afghanistan, because even when we fight those never-ending wars, Israel wins. Everybody knows that our boys were out there in Afghanistan guarding poppy fields, okay? And do you know what happened after we allegedly, quote-unquote, lost in Afghanistan? What happened to all those poppy fields, those poppy flowers that our military was guarding? Well, the opioid crisis hit America via the Sackler family, who quite literally built the School of Medicine at Tel Aviv University. So we're just done, okay? And there's no way that we're going to go
All of our opiates are coming from Afghanistan, not China or Mexico. Or maybe they start in Afghanistan.
backwards. We're not going to allow you guys to emotionally condition us. Oh, well, we got to protect Israel because of the Holocaust. It is over. They're imparting a Holocaust. America would like off this crazy train.
Okay, for the benefit of viewers who don't know what I was talking about, under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 90, dishonourable discharge can result in forfeiture of all pay and allowances up to 5 years confinement, which is a pretty heavy penalty to pay.
Yeah, I want my kids to go to jail before they fought for Israel. I'll say that honestly.
Okay.
I would. I have 3 sons, and I'm going to be honest with you, Pierce. I'm glad you told me that consequence. I take that consequence any day to them being sent back over in a coffin because they died for Israel. So.
Okay, but I think the one thing
My
you're missing,
opinion.
look, I come from a big military family, a lot of military in my family, and a lot of people fighting wars on behalf of the United States are not doing it because they think Bibi Netanyahu wants them to. They're doing it because
Well, some of them do. that, and they write into
Well,
my show
some
and I
might,
answer the
but
question.
many of them won't, and they might be offended
They
by
can
you
watch your show.
suggesting that's the only reason they're doing
And they
it.
can watch your show, and
Yep.
they can be offended all they want, but I think it's more offensive the way that our military is treated, the veterans are treated, and the gaslighting that takes place when we're told that we have to defend everybody's borders. But
I actually think America treats its veterans better than almost any country in the world.
I mean, this has always been an open conversation, and I'm just saying that if my boys were being drafted to fight this war in Iran, I would be like, you know what, honey, take the other option. And that's not because it's cowardice, it's because when you sign up for the military,
Okay, but I would say that the pilots,
you are
so
pledging
far,
that you are doing something that is going to better your country.
Candace, so
and like
far,
I said, our country has been in steep decline since we haven't part of
You've
this
made
foreign
that point.
policy, which is just whatever Israel wants.
You made that
Israel
point, but
gets.
what I would say to you is the only people so far that have been involved from the American military were the extraordinarily courageous and skillful pilots who flew these B-2 bombers and attacked the nuclear sites and got back safely. So there's been no troops on the ground committed at all, no declaration of war by the United States. We can quit. Listen, I don't disagree with you. You bomb somewhere, you probably are at war with them. But there was no official declaration of war, just as Trump, when he took out Soleimani and Baghdadi and he attacked Syria, he didn't declare war on those places. And actually it turned out that the
we got the Syrian attack in there. Good job.
apocalyptic warnings of those actions never materialized. So we shall see. I can't let you go without asking. Let me ask you just quickly about the Tucker-Ted Cruz debate. What did you make of that?
Fantastic.
I think that Tucker did a great job. I think Cruz got shown to be the Zionist shill that he was, and I think Tucker obliviated him. She's obviously 100% bought into Tucker's camp. This weird pro-Russian, anti-American isolation is probably foreign-paid, crazy propaganda, whatever bullshit they're doing.
Fantastic. It is finally the debate that needed to happen in America, because a part of this nonstop policy is this belief, as you said, Ted Cruz, that if we just do whatever Israel wants, that God's going to bless you. And it's quite ironic because it comes from Protestants, and their normal argument is that the reason why we had to have this fracture in the church was because of indulgences. Well, there's nothing more indulgent than I'm going to be blessed if I just do whatever Israel says. And so because we are finally having that spiritual conversation, which is more important, I suspect there's going to be major changes in the United States going forward, and that is why you're seeing this fracture in the base already.
Okay.
Tucker, according to Donald Trump, Tucker rang Trump to apologize for some of the more strident rhetoric he's used against him recently. Are you done with Donald Trump, or could you see a way that you would end up perhaps voting for him? You can't run again, obviously, but would you support him publicly again?
So I want to be clear. I don't regret voting for Donald Trump above Kamala. I think he was a better candidate, certainly a better candidate above Joe Biden. But what I will say is that he's been a chronic disappointment, and I feel embarrassed.
Remember, guys, just keep tabs on all this. With Biden and with Kamala, the lefties, right, your Hassan Pikers, these people are looking for, give me a reason, give me an excuse not to vote for you. So much so that they won't even endorse the candidate. Meanwhile, you have Candace Owens, who is a full-blown neo-Nazi. She subscribes to, she just did the Great Migration thing with immigration. She believes in the whole Zog shit. She definitely believes that 9/11. I don't know if she's talked about it. If anybody has a video of her, I bet she believes that 9/11 was caused by the Jews. Like, she believes that all the wars in the Middle East are caused by Israel, right? This is a neo-Nazi. Donald Trump is literally an Israel cocksuck. Donald Trump is a massive Israel simp, okay, that nobody can deny. Fuck, where was my... No. Fuck. Who was the guy? The other ex-Griper guy. Who did I debate? Fuck, what's his name? Somebody say it. John Doyle, that's right.
On the ground there, I would say that Donald Trump makes me really nervous when it comes to Israel, because I've never seen a more Zoggy type president. It makes me really worry that I think Donald Trump ordered that hit on Soleimani. He was the leader of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is responsible for a lot of the international meddling that goes along, inside of Israel. He's supported Hezbollah, he supported the Houthis, he supported Hamas, and I kind of wonder if Donald Trump only ordered that assassination because of the $100 million that Adelson and other AIPAC donors sent to his campaign. I know
you see that I'm like, these are all the neo-Nazi talking points that she's bringing right now. She brought up the Adelson person. She brought up the $100 million. She brings up the fact that Israel funds these terrorist groups. She brings up the fact that we only hit Soleimani because, these are super common, bog standard neo-Nazi talking points. This debate was like almost a year ago.
Donald Trump is on record saying publicly that he is Israel's strongest supporter. I know that Donald Trump created a position in the White House and sent his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to the Middle East to negotiate peace deals for
She brought up the Kushner connection and everything as well, right? Yeah.
Israel. I don't know why the United States is risking itself to make peace agreements for Israel, for other countries between them and Israel. And then I know that we talk about moving the embassy and recognizing. I think it was like America was like one of 3 countries to do that. I thought that was really weird. And along with that, I think Trump was also willing to go along with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu was talking about cutting UNRWA funding and everything to the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. And I don't think that Donald Trump did anything to hold Israel accountable for any of its behavior in the Middle East. So I think one of the things that I'm the most worried about when it comes to Donald Trump and foreign policy is he definitely comes off as kind of like an Israeli Jewish puppet, and that just makes me really nervous. I think I'd rather have somebody like Kamala Harris, who seems to be really critical of Israel and their foreign policy, and seems to be a lot less bought and paid for by.
So I'm making this is the neo-Nazi argument, but keep in mind that, so I'm making the verbatim neo-Nazi argument that she's making, okay? But the difference is on the left, people will look for any reason not to support the candidate. She fully buys into the neo-Nazi argument related to Jews running the U.S. However, she still supports Donald Trump. What the fuck, guys?
Certainly a better candidate above Joe Biden. But what I will say is that
she still supports him. What?
End up perhaps voting for him. You can't run again, obviously, but would you support him publicly again?
So I want to be clear. I don't regret voting for Donald Trump above Kamala. I think he was the better candidate, certainly a better candidate above Joe Biden. But what I will say is that he's been a chronic disappointment, and I feel embarrassed that I told people to go vote for him because this wasn't going to happen, and it is happening. But I I just think that the picture of politics in America is going to look very differently because of his actions. So I don't know where to go from here. I really don't. But
I don't know. It's wild to me.
This is not the candidate that I voted for.
If it turns out that his instincts were right, that by doing what he did, it brings Iran to the negotiating table and they do a deal on their nuclear plans.
Oh, yeah? Trump, that deal master.
Would you admit that you were wrong in that circumstance?
Yeah. I will always admit when I'm wrong. Anybody that listens to my podcast knows that. It just so happens to be, especially if I come on to the Piers Morgan show and I make some predictions, and it ends up that I'm right. So I'm feeling lucky, but I will of course admit I'm wrong if that is the result.
Candace, always good to have your views on Uncensored. You know that. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, joining me now is the Chief Executive Officer of Blaze Media, Glenn Beck.
May I say something just to start? Would we be having this?
I came across these arguments from family members as well, but I don't understand what makes them neo-Nazi arguments. Because what they'll do is they'll take a whole set of things that they don't like and they ascribe all of it to Israel. The reality is Israel is a valuable partner for the United States in the Middle East. In the Soviet era, as people were jockeying for position and influence across the world, the first world and the second world, the Americans and the Soviets are fighting for influence. You see that the Middle East became one of the huge battlegrounds in the early 1900s as oil reserves start to get found in the Middle East, and as oil and energy become more important factors, and then also the positions when it comes to like geostrategic stuff, meaning moving ships and stuff for war and for economic stuff like controlling shipping lanes and everything, being in control of these countries or at least being friendly with them represented a huge interest. So at least up through 91, there's a reason why, you know, people say, what did we get for backing Israel? Well, what did the Soviets get for backing Syria, Jordan, and Egypt and all the other Arab states? Like, what did it, like? Clearly, they thought they were getting something, right? Like, clearly, somebody thought something was happening, and you've seen, you know, multiple countries or great empires jockeying for influence over all of these countries in the Middle East. So World War I, it was Russia, it was Britain, and then it was the German Empire fighting over Persia. In World War II, there was a whole bunch of fights, and then through the Cold War, you have like the Soviet like war. You have all these people fighting for geostrategic interests in the Middle East. 91, the Soviet Union falls, but there's still interest there. There's a reason why we have allies in the region, and there's a reason why we want to represent allied interest in the region. Now, you can try to turn that on its head and go, we're doing it for Israel. And I mean, like, strictly speaking, that's kind of right, but it also misses the point, right? Like, would you say, for instance, like the 6-month-old is the true leader of the household? Well, no, it's the parents. Really, it's the parents. Notice how every single time little Tommy cries, you go and you feed him. Notice how he can literally disrupt your sleep schedule, force you to pay money for food, sometimes spend an extravagant amount of money on the hospital. What the fuck do you get from little Timmy? He's a little annoying fucking spoiled kid that cries all day. He doesn't do anything. Can't even fucking walk, right? And it's like, well, okay, but you're kind of missing the point. So does the U.S. represent a lot of interest for Israel? Yeah, of course, but it's because we consider our interests to be aligned. Same thing in the before Trump, I guess, with Ukraine, right? It's not like Ukraine controlled America, although people are also trying to make this weird argument that Zelensky secretly controlled the White House or whatever, because you have to have that. Like, sometimes your interests can just be aligned. Like, you can have aligned interests. That's possible.
Debate in this way if Hamas would have done to England what they did to Israel? Would we be having this debate? Because I don't.
Oh, big. Okay, Glenn Beck, big Israel simp, I guess. So he's not bought into any of the. It's so weird to see where MAGA draw their lines on what conspiracies they want to believe. Okay, so we're about to see Israel's strongest soldier. We're about to see Brianna Wu defense for Israel here. Here we go.
I don't think we would. I think America would be over there. I think the whole world would be over there, and we'd pound them into sand until they surrendered. But I don't understand why we're having debates here on actions that Barack Obama took, and nobody really said anything about it. They weren't screaming for an act of war. I know this is a very bad situation, and I hope to God. I mean, I'm glad that Donald Trump is our president, because I wouldn't have had the balls to do it. I think it was the right thing to do, but I wouldn't have had the balls to do it.
Well, it's really interesting, because I know that historically, I mean, you know, I'm not going to pick on you for this, but I happen to be the editor. Right. No, it'll be obvious what I'm saying, but I was editor of the Daily Mirror newspaper, one of the big national papers in the UK, for many years.
Isn't it kind of suspicious that our interests happen to align with other white people, but never with Arabs in the Middle East, for example? Kind of weird. What are you talking about? We've paid so much money out to Egypt in order for their alliance with Israel, and we are huge allies and friends with the Sauds, with the Saudi Arabia. So that statement is just on its face fucking retarded. But
no, it'll be obvious what I'm saying. But I was editor of the Daily Mirror.
In the aggregate, it wouldn't surprise me if, on average, I bet if you were to average out the skin color in all of Iran and all of Turkey, I bet those countries are both whiter than just the Jewish population in Israel. That wouldn't surprise me, actually.
a newspaper, one of the big national papers in the UK, for many years, and I campaigned vociferously on the front page after front page against the Iraq War. And it was particularly contentious in the UK because we were the Labour supporting newspaper and Tony Blair was a Labour Prime Minister. So it was a huge sort of deal over here. And I know that you initially...
I never thought of Egypt as part of the Middle East. I think it's considered, not even Greater Middle East. I think Egypt is considered part of the Middle East.
supported the Iraq War, and then afterwards you later accepted that that had been a mistake, which, you know, again, is part of your strength, I think.
You know, I think, Piers, you can't silence people when they're wrong because hopefully they're on the road to becoming right.
Yes.
But you only get that if you have a debate. And I will tell you that I was for Afghanistan. I was a very big, war hawk. Let's go in and just do it. Let's do it. I'm not that way anymore because I've seen the pattern. It doesn't work out. America needs to mind its own business. We can't silence people when they're wrong because hopefully they're on the road to becoming right.
Yes.
But you only get that if you have a debate. And I will tell you that I was for Afghanistan. I was a very big, war hawk. Let's go in and just do it. Let's do it. I'm not that way anymore because I've seen the pattern. It does.
Why is Israel a good ally? I mean, in the past, it was the country. I mean, realistically, the answer, but people are so mind-fucked at this point. The answer is that the Israeli society, the Israeli style of government and everything is just more Western influenced and tends to be more Western ideologically oriented than the other states in the region. That's the actual answer. I mean, they literally came from, initially, the Israeli government was formed by Jewish people that were coming from Europe. So they had a European concept of government, democracy, and everything else. And the way that the people, their ideology and the way they run their country and everything else, just more maps cleanly onto first world ideology versus second world ideology. And then after the Civil War, I don't know how many relationships around the world dramatically changed. I feel like things kind of stayed. Did I say after the Civil War or Soviet War? Or did I say Cold War? After the fall of the Soviet Union in '91, I think the relationships around the world roughly stayed about the same, I think.
Doesn't work out. America needs to mind its own business. We can't export what we have. I mean, I have hopes for the Middle East. I have hopes for Iran. I pray for the people in Iran. They're a very big danger, but the one thing, again, I go back to Donald Trump. I don't think he's being duped. In 2016, maybe. I mean, he is told.
I was taught Egypt's a part of Africa, but what do I know? Apparently, you don't know much of anything, because if you believe that Egypt is a part of Africa, then you also probably believe that the Middle East isn't even a real place at all, because there is no such thing as a Middle East continent. You have Africa, Europe, and Asia, and I guess the Middle East just doesn't exist at all. So I guess if that's your perspective, that's fine.
The one thing, again, I go back to Donald Trump. I don't think he's being duped. In 2016, maybe. I mean, he has told me he didn't really know what he was up against. He knows what he's up against now. He hates war, hates it. As much as he loves tariffs, he hates war. He has told me eye to eye about how he has redesigned, or he had to rebuild, our nuclear arsenal. And in a fashion that I've never seen Donald Trump. He said, Glenn, it can never be used. It is horrifying what can be done now. I know, I helped rebuild it. It can never be used. He hates nuclear war. He hates regular war.
Yeah.
And I think he really believes he did the right thing, and I don't think he's being duped by it.
No, and it's interesting because I know that you were hoping he didn't do what he did. Now that he's done it, and obviously it's
now that he's done it, you're ready to defend it wholesale, right?
Incredibly early days, and none of us can be sure what is going to happen, and I wouldn't even attempt to guess. But I certainly think that Trump's intentions were well-intentioned. I think he has said for many years that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon, and he genuinely believed that enriching their uranium stocks from 3.5% to 60% was a dangerous escalation that could only be heading one way. And so he's taken the same action that he did when he took out Soleimani or Baghdadi, when he attacked.
Wait, does he have more videos? Why don't we have? I need world geography taught by Zizek. Wait, I haven't watched this before.
Where
What?
is Balkan? This was a standard joke. Let me do the entire theory. So we have here Slovenia, and every Slovene will tell you this is the limit. Here, Balkan confusion starts. Okay, then let's go on. You ask a Croat, he will tell you it is clear. Croats are Middle Europa, Catholic, Belgrade, Serbia, Orthodox religion. We are in Balkan. You ask a Serb, he will tell you down here, either Sarajevo or Kosovo. They will tell you this is the true Balkan. Now, the irony is that if you go too much down, then all of a sudden Balkan is up there. No? In Greece, they will tell you, we Greeks, we are the origin of Europe. Up there, the dark Balkan mountains. If you ask an Austrian, he will tell you, Slovenia, Balkan begins, Slavic, primitives, and so on. If you ask a German, He will tell you Austria, when they had an empire, was already too much mixed with all this. It's already Balkanized. French people will tell you Germany, dark, fascist, kind of a Balkan, we are civilization. And finally, the British will tell you all Europe is today a big Balkan with Brussels bureaucracy as a new Istanbul. We British are the only one.
Syria, when he dropped big bombs in Afghanistan, he's done things strategically as he sees it without actually committing large number of American troops.
The classic Zizek meme. Yeah, we watched this one on stream a few days ago.
Okay, we can begin. Okay. Now, what you see here is, at least in summer or in the fall, one of the nicest views of Ljubljana. It looks like Paris, green leaves, etc. On both sides, nice old houses, nothing special. But you are wrong. This river here is the official geographical limit between Balkan and Middle Europa. So beware. On the other side, horror, Oriental despotism, women get beaten, get raped and like it. On this side, Europe, civilization, women get beaten and raped but don't like it. So, Balkan, Middle Europa, don't forget it.
Okay. Can you explain how Bibi's government are not considered religious extremists when they seem to consistently use religious mandate as a reason for Zionism? It just doesn't function that way. Like, they are democratically elected leaders. I mean, they might appeal to religion a lot. But I mean, like in the U.S., leaders appeal to religion as well. Keep in mind, our president literally said the Bible was the most important book ever written in the world. And we've got crazies like Huckabee posting text messages and shit to him. I think religion is just kind of weaponized, I think, by political leaders sometimes. But I would argue that almost all of the world is like that at this point, save for a few exceptions.
But on the ground, you also have to look at this. Every single president since Clinton has said this. Okay, Iran has killed more Americans as a nation than I think any other nation has.
There we go.
They've been an enemy. Every single president has said they cannot have a nuclear weapon. I don't want to go to war with Iran. I don't want any of this. However, when you talk to a B-2 bomber, which I did over the weekend, they have been running this particular run for 15 years plus. We built in White Sands. We built a model of that reactor. This bomb that we dropped, we're the only ones with it in the world. It was made for those reactors, specifically for those reactors. It is so accurate, it can hit the top of a pop can or a Coke can from 50,000 feet. It had to go into a 10 by 10 foot vent. They have been running this over and over again. That's not Donald Trump. That's the American policy. We know that these people are serious when they say they're going to burn first the Jews in the Islamic fiery furnace and then America.
Okay, I can't believe the vent theory. That has to be a Star Trek, or not Star Trek, a Star Wars meme or a Top Gun meme. When people are like, you got to go right down the vent, okay? Why would you build a vent like that goes all the way down to your keyblade? Why can't you curve it a little bit? You're telling me you can't have a vent that like does this and put some fucking fans in it? There is no world. There is no shot. There is no shot that every single underground facility has to have a vent like this. I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe that. No shot.
For the great Satan. They have been a threat of ours for a long time. I wish we could have negotiated our way, but it didn't happen. So now we're here. Now what do we do?
Well, as we're talking, I'm just going to read this to you. Reuters and AFP are reporting explosions over Doha. So we're talking Monday evening UK time, Monday afternoon your time in the States. Iranian media saying Iran is attacking US bases in both Qatar and Iraq. And this follows BBC and Fox News reporting credible and imminent threats of Iranian missile attacks on US-run air bases. So that's just breaking as you and I are talking. But clearly that would be a significant escalation. If Iran is targeting US air bases now in the Middle East, what do you think that means as we progress forward?
I don't know. I've been saying to my audience.
It's built like that, but those bombs are crazy maneuverable. I don't believe you. No, that's not true. The bombs are not crazy maneuverable. The bombs, once they're launched, are basically on the same fucking trajectory with a little bit of guidance on the way to the bottom. If they were to completely change the trajectory, by the time they the bottom, there'd be no point in dropping them from so far in the air. Why would you bother dropping something from 50,000 feet if you're just going to slow it down and then maneuver it at the bottom? It's not a cruise missile.
Pray for peace, but prepare for war. This is a war that I think is coming one way or another. I mean, look at
Holy
the
War.
state of...
Oh my God, thank God. I forgot. It's Glenn Beck. Holy war time. Let's go.
Pray for peace, but prepare for war. This is a war that I think is coming one way or another. I mean, look at the state of Europe, look at the state of England, look at the state of America. I mean, this is a war with Islamists, not Muslims, Islamists that is going to happen at some point. I think we're at the beginning of a 50-year war with Islamists, and it's disturbing to me. And the reason why is we're not clear. None of our countries, Donald Trump will, but none of our countries will even name what we're against. They won't say it. You know, what I complimented you for doing on this show is actually saying what the truth is and letting all sides. Our governments are silencing, and I think it's because they're afraid. But it's a war that is absolutely coming. And the problem is, I remember I sat in the Oval Office during the Gulf War, or the Iraqi War, with George Bush, and he was reading me the riot act because I wasn't happy about the way things were going. And he said to me, I said, you know, you got an election coming up, and what do you think these guys are going to do? And he said something, and he tried to...
You slow the bomb down to penetrate more precisely. It's called the slow blade principle. Shut the fuck up.
He said to me, I said, you know, you got an election coming up, and what do you think these guys are going to do? And he said something, and he tried to make me feel better, and this actually made me feel horrible. He said, Glenn, don't worry about it. No matter who wins, when they sit behind this desk, they'll be advised by the same voices, and they'll realize they have no other options. I left that office thinking, then why do we elect a president? What is happening? We have to break this cycle. Hopefully...
Bro, how do I want to be like this. Tell me what I have to do. I just want to get credit for trying things, even if I don't ever fucking do anything. You guys need to be posting constantly. Thank God that Destiny at least said he was going to do the J6 video, and then give me credit for basically having it done. Okay? Can I... Maybe flip-flops later, but for now, it was a pleasure to see this from a U.S. president for the first time in my lifetime. Israel, do not drop those bombs. If you do, it's a major violation. Like, how are you giving credit to the president of the fucking United States for schizo posting on social media? Are you fucking serious? Is this the state of U.S. politics?
This we're not being lulled into something or pulled into something that is, you know, long planned. Hopefully we can end this quickly and return to some normalcy in all of our countries. But we have to face the truth.
Yeah, I think I completely concur with you. And like I said, whilst I can absolutely understand why Donald Trump did what he did, and while I think there's a compelling argument that Iran was fast accelerating its way to a nuclear weapon, which everybody basically agrees, apart from Iran and its allies, would be a very bad thing for the world. Once you do strike in the way that the United States struck with these bunker buster bombs, you cannot then control the way the narrative plays out. You don't know how the receiving end of that is going to respond.
I think that our side is hoping that they are so weakened that they don't have much fight left in them. I would hope that. However, if I said on Friday or Saturday when it happened that if somebody did that to us and just blew up one of our bases in the United States, here in our continental U.S., we would declare that's a declaration of war.
Yeah.
And why would we expect them not to feel that way? The only hope is that there's...
Why do people do this? You listen to these people for commentary? It's not the same. It's not like this, like, if the same thing would happen in the United States and then they would do that to us, it's not, we're not actively involved in military conflict with a bunch of these other countries. That's not even remotely You want to know what the closest thing is to that example that we did do? Is when we started talking about redrawing borders with Canada and sanctioning them. We called them terrorists, but really we were like doing basically unilateral sanctions, betraying a trade agreement that the same leader had negotiated 5 years ago. That's the closest we come to like acts of war in other countries. Or the Alien Enemies Act, where we have to say basically we're at war with Venezuela, which is why we're deporting Venezuelans to other countries. But we don't talk about that. Like, it's so stupid.
So weakened that it can end quickly.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, I think this attempt to try and pretend it's not a declaration of war, I don't think that flies. I mean, I posted on X, this is America saying it's at war with Iran, right? I mean, you drop 30,000-pound bombs all over the place on nuclear sites in a foreign country. You are
except
it's a
we've done that
war.
before. Except we've done that before in other cases, and nobody's had this reaction. But it's not Iran and Israel. For some reason, that's just totally different for everybody.
I mean, what's strange about that whole thing? I mean, you drop 30,000-pound bombs all over the place on nuclear.
Yo, what happened to your debate? It's been deleted. I was watching it like 30 minutes ago. The Pangberg guy wants to post it first, and I think we use too much content from it, so he wants to chill on posting it.
And why would we expect them not to feel that way? The only hope is that they're so weakened that it can end quickly.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, I think this attempt to try and pretend it's not a declaration of war, I don't think that flies. I mean, I posted on X, this is America saying it's at war with Iran, right? I mean, you drop 30,000-pound bombs all...
Like, what is this analysis? What do you think? So Iran is going to deploy troops to New York? Or like, what the fuck are we even talking about? This is such a stupid... This is like politics for retards. I don't understand. I don't understand. Like, what are we even saying right now?
All over the place on nuclear sites in a foreign country. You are...
Except we've done that before. Except we've done that before in other cases, and nobody's had this reaction. But it's not Iran and Israel.
I mean, we've done what before? No one's had this reaction. What's he? I don't know what he is referring to there. We've bombed other people before, and we've hoped that they didn't do fuck all. Actually, we've done it explosively with Iran. We did it when we killed Soleimani.
For some reason, that's just totally different for everybody.
I mean, what's strange about that whole thing is if you go back into the not too distant past of Iran and Israel, before the revolution in '79, they got on pretty well.
Why would you, before the revolution, before there was a total shift and change in leadership, things were totally different. Like, yeah, it's not really that strange. If you think about it, we were actually really hostile towards Japan and Germany before massive leadership changes. Isn't that kind of weird how that, like, what is the point of this statement?
It's like a lot of these relationships have been contaminated.
Or the leadership dramatically changes for reasons that might be oppositional to people in other countries. Like, that's not, I don't understand. Does he think that this was all like random shit that happened? I don't understand.
In the last 40, 50 years.
So I'm doing a show Thursday, Piers, that I'm glad you brought this up because I was just talking to my producers about the direction I want to go in, and that is look at Europe today, look at England today, then look at Iran 1977, 1975. Look, nobody was wearing hijabs, nothing like that. And in 1979, it's over, it's lights out. We can't ignore the poison of Islamists in our...
And this is where the lefties and the anti-imperialist people rightfully would get super ass-pained. Oh, it was just Islam that caused the dramatic shift in interest in Iran. Oh, okay.
Our own society. We all think that it's not going to happen. It can't happen, but it can. All we have to do is make the distinction between Islamist and a Muslim. One is our enemy. The other is a practitioner of a religion.
I mean, I would expand that to say it's extremism, right? Extremism of any kind should be condemned by all right-thinking people.
This is such a boring tautology. Like, extremism definitionally is bad. Like, an extremism is almost definitionally a thing taken too far. It's like the statement, like, everything is okay in moderation. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Like, generally nothing is good outside of moderation, because definitionally means you're probably doing it too much. Like, yeah, everything is good. Like, extremism is bad. Like, why not just say, the whole story should be like, bad things are bad. And every intelligent person who is morally good should agree that bad things are bad. Like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock fucking Holmes.
Because extremism is never the right way, just by the very
when are we going to do that?
By the very definition of the word.
Ask him about Christian extremism. What do you think when the president of the United States references religion over and over and over again?
Isn't that in some ways exactly what Donald Trump did? Took a clear line. We've had president after president say, we're not going to let this stand. He does it, and now he's the extremist? I don't know. I think he's standing up for what he believes is coming.
Glenn, what's fascinating, watching the conservative right in the last few weeks has been fascinating. For the real schism that's been developing now, what do you make of that? There's always been disagreement, but never quite, it seems to me, on such implacable levels as we're seeing right now, where people are really one way or the other.
I've never seen anything. I'm friends with Ted Cruz. I'm friends with Tucker Carlson. I like both of them. I know Donald Trump. I don't know Elon Musk, but I like both of them. Stop making me choose. I don't think this is helpful for the Republic. We can disagree on things, but to have these arguments.
Look at it. See, God, why can't our extremists be this way? Glenn Beck is an extremist, just to be clear. Why can't our extremists be this way? Look at him. He's like, we need to have, what do you say, Elon Musk and Donald Trump? These are very, very, very different people. We need to have Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz, who they literally just had the most oppositional fucking interview possible, imaginable. That was an ambush interview, and they were still blowing each other up on Twitter afterwards. Meanwhile, on the left, they're like, Biden came in and only said he would try to push for a $13 minimum wage instead of a $15 minimum wage. Somebody get the goddamn rope. We're going to kill this motherfucker. Like, people are...
that we're having. I mean, I'm sorry. I've known Candace Owens for a long time. I don't know what happened to Candace. She's off on a different planet now. To deny Mengele and everything else is truly horrifying. But there's a lot of people that I disagree with that I can still have conversations with.
Candace is like way off on her own land.
I think this is...
And he says that about her. Candace still supports Trump. She still supports Donald Trump.
In many ways, intentional. We're all being driven to these extremes, and it's either you are this or you are that, and there's nothing in between. That's not real life. All life has nuance. There's no way to navigate. There's no way to defend ourselves, our culture, if we all must be 100% this or 100% that.
And you know what? And I genuinely believe it's being fueled by social media, because what social media does, it fuels tribalism, where people, in the end, they become so tribal, and the echo chamber keeps reinforcing this one singular worldview, that when facts change, they don't want to accept it. If it is negative to their tribe, and it reminds me, I read a book about this.
I hate this aesthetic that Piers is wearing right now, because this is exactly what he facilitates, and so does everybody else facilitate. But then they wear the aesthetic of not facilitating, and it's so fucking frustrating. Holy shit.
Several years ago, where I talked about, if you go back in 2,000 years, you would have genuine tribes, right, in the world. And they would be on their own, and they would dress a certain way, and they would cut their hair a certain way, they would eat certain food, they would drink certain drink.
Okay, there were civilizations that existed 2,000 years ago. I don't know if he went back far enough. I mean, there are also tribes as well, but okay.
They would have a language which they understood, and they would stay pretty much in their own area amongst themselves. So they only ever knew one way. And then slowly but surely, these tribes edged out, began to travel more, and they encountered other tribes. And these other tribes looked a bit different. They sounded a bit different. They maybe ate different food. They laughed at different things. And these tribes concluded in that experimental moment that the only solution was to kill each other. And I look at what happens on social media now, and it's pretty much the same thing, where the tribes are so locked in to supporting their own side against any invader, as they put it, that even when there is something which self-evidently their own side should condemn, you know, whether it's a right or left, they can't bring themselves to.
Someone needs to develop a standardized bias test for you to walk pundits through to expose this shit. There is a standardized test, and it's what's your opinion on Israel-Palestine?
Do it, they will fall over themselves to explain, to justify, to excuse, because they feel like they're betraying their tribe.
So I completely agree with that, but I'd like to add one more thing.
Yeah.
I'm a recovering alcoholic, and you know, you tell yourself lies and lies and lies and lies, and you get to a point to where at some point you have to reject almost everything you are to tell the truth. And it becomes, you might know, I can't keep living this way. I can't keep living this way. But you have to reject everything that you have built. And that's the problem with these tribes is we have...
It's so crazy how perfectly they describe their own political movements. That's insane to me.
Separated ourselves. And for me to not hate you, I have to reject almost everything that I have built in my own life because I'm built on hating you now. That is a really dangerous place, and we're there.
Like, how much time when he was doing the Tea Party shit in the early days and everything, did he call like Obama like a evil communist trying to destroy the country and like all these other like? You should watch the Streamers versus 9-to-5 worker debate. Wait, what?
And we have to recognize Western civilization. You know, beyond that, you know, in the Bible, when the Jews go down into Israel, the Lord says, choose life. That is the choice. It is life or death. There is a culture of death through many different factions, if you will. Death or life. We've got to choose life. And the Western civilization has always been about life. If we can't find our way to each other and say, look, I reject this death cult, we're not going to survive. No. If we don't survive, the world becomes a very dark place. And I don't mean the United States. I mean the entire Western world.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that this is why I found what Elon Musk calls the woke mind virus so damaging, because it fueled all that stuff.
The ketamine guy. Elon Musk is who we're going to for our political insight now. The guy who calls everybody pedophiles as soon as they disagree with him. The guy who, also keep in mind, because the news cycle is literally 1 to 2 days, I guess, 24 to 72 hours. Elon Musk literally said Trump was in the Epstein files. That's why they're not being released. Actually, just kidding, LOL. And then now we just continue to go on like life is normal.
And often on a kind of preposterous denial of even basic biology and science. And it just, when people started trying to defend the fact of biological memory in women's sport, I was like, we've lost our minds here. What is going on?
And isn't it amazing? The guy who was the biggest on the left.
Yes. Thank God we got girl cock in there. Yes.
Was a hero for what he did for the environment, electric cars, and everything else. The minute he disagrees with them politically, he's dead to them.
Yeah, that was it. It was the minute that Elon Musk disagreed. It wasn't the fact that he bought an entire social media platform, said that his best job was when he was triggering the left and the right equally, and he wanted to remain politically neutral, and then became a full-on Trump supporter and got a position in the fucking White House. Are you serious? Like, listen, if you can't state, this should be in the DSM for delusions or histrionic shit, or I don't know what you would like. This is delusional. Or you're lying to such a degree that it should be like punishable. I don't know who would sue you for this, but like if your ability to state the opposition argument is this degraded, something is rotting inside of your fucking head. It's crazy. People were just mad at Elon just because he disagreed with him.
Try to destroy his business. They burn his cars. They'd like to kill him. I mean, that should tell you something. You're on the wrong side when that is your reaction.
And also, if you're behaving exactly the same way that you profess to condemn in others, that should tell you.
This is also the second brain rot thing, right? A bunch of people go out and they start murdering black people, and then a bunch of other people go, I'm just using a hypothetical example, right? And then a bunch of other people go out and they start murdering the people murdering black people, and they're like, don't you think that you're doing the exact same thing that you're criticizing them for? Like, chronology matters, bro. Like, the sequence of events is important here. Because one of these people caused it to happen, started the event. That's important.
It's time to look in the mirror and work out what you're really about. What is your soul actually doing? If you spend all day shrieking one thing and then you behave exactly the same way yourself.
Piers, I have to tell you, I think about England a lot. I pray for England.
Also, people like this will constantly say, aren't you doing the same thing they're doing? So doesn't that make it bad? And then finally, once these spineless liberals and have been beaten down, and they're like, yeah, you're right. But notice how, well, hold on. You're saying that 2 wrongs don't make it right, but why don't you ever talk about the other wrong? Why do you only talk about it when it's the second wrong? Why don't you start with them?
A lot. I don't know if I'm getting on my social media what it's really like in England, but I've seen a difference when I was in London just in 3 years. I was there 3 years ago. I was just there recently, and there is a difference there. And if we don't find a way to
Too many more Muslims. What?
Wake up, stand up, and bring people to their senses calmly and rationally, all of our countries are going to fall like dominoes soon.
Well, the big problem I have with England is, look, there are many great...
Listen, you're in agreement 99%. Why are you lashing out? All he's saying is the Ethan thing is that Ethan is lying when he says it's to protect React content, that the document is shit. Do you disagree? I think that Pisco's hyperfixation on that one point is incredibly sus and cringe, and there's no way to reconcile how unhinged he is on the obsession for that one point. There's no way to reconcile that with how horribly incorrect his entire analysis of the Hassan immigration thing is. To say that he's like 100% certain of that when there's 0% proof of anything whatsoever, because people try to defend the take on the Ethan stuff. We're like, oh, he's only doing the legal analysis, try to be very careful. Okay, well, then explain the Hassan stuff where he says he's 100% correct. It's not. I don't think it's worth it to think about.
Qualities of England. I think it's been massively overblown, and people like Tommy Robinson and these guys, they are not people that should be taken seriously in this debate.
Oh, is Glenn Beck going to fight on that? I guarantee. Well, no. Glenn Beck probably wouldn't like Tommy Robinson because Tommy Robinson does the neo-Nazi shit too, right? But there are a lot of Muslims in London. Careful.
In my estimation. However, notwithstanding that, the insidious attacks on free speech in England have been really, really staggering and alarming to watch. When you get people, grandmothers being locked up for something they posted on Facebook and then delete it because they thought I shouldn't have done that. That's not what a democratic society like the UK should be doing to anybody. And I think that obviously we all know, I think, in our gut what the exceptions to free speech are. If you're literally inciting people to kill people, fine. We can all agree that is wrong, right? But when you're expressing a vehement opinion because you may be emotionally overwrought about something, which is genuinely horrific, and you're just spewing off,
or you're just wrong,
and you then calm down and delete that, whatever, and then you're put in prison for 2 years. I just think that is basically, then you're into North Korea, Russia, and everything else, where any criticism of the state does that.
Which brings me right back to where we started. Thank you for having people I strongly disagree with. I disagreed with both of those guests that you just had on. Thank you for having them on. I have to see that. We all have to see that. We have to exercise the muscle of curiosity and intelligence and calmness while listening to people we vehemently disagree.
Yeah, and just final point, but on the guy, the Israeli minister, the reason I was so annoyed was one of the devices used to silence legitimate debate about this is you call somebody something ending in "ick" or "ist." So if you said the biological men in women's sport thing was a problem, you were immediately transphobic. And similarly, if you've criticised Israel's,
you know that earlier, weren't you just saying that all these people are Islamists? Is that fundamentally different than what you're talking about here? Maybe, I don't know.
Recent strategy in Gaza, which most people find pretty indefensible. Even if you've been someone like me that stuck his neck out to defend Israel for many, many months and their right to defend themselves, even if I tried to be really fair and impartial and go after both sides where I felt they're wrong, that any semblance of criticising the Israeli government strategy meant I must be anti-Semitic and a Jew hater. And I was really incensed by that. And so when he came on and tried to pretend that isn't what he was saying, and that it was about one or two guests or whatever, that's not what he posted. He was doing that deliberately to try and silence me. And I find that a really insidious thing too.
Wow.
I agree with you. I've been called the same thing. I bring up George Soros, and suddenly I'm an anti-Semite.
Yeah,
Candace Owens brings up the Jewish cabal, and nobody's going to say anything about that. I mean, it's
nobody's calling Candace Owens anti-Semitic. Oh, okay, bro.
So ridiculous.
Yeah,
so ridiculous.
It is. Glenn, great to talk to you as always.
Thank you.
Come back soon. I always really enjoy our conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Bill O'Reilly. Do you think he had all three of these people on separately because he knows they'd fight too much independently and they wouldn't agree to it?
Well, I'm now joined by host of No Spin News on YouTube and author of new book Confronting Evil, Bill O'Reilly. Bill, great to have you back on Uncensored.
Yeah, I got to get a sweater like Beck. I got to get rid of this tie. So, and he's tan. You notice that? He's tan. I don't know what Beck is doing. I don't know if he's working as hard as he should work.
Let's unfortunately talk about more serious matters. What the hell is going on, Bill?
Well, what do you want to know? You want to know history? You want to know Western civilization? You want to know terrorism? I mean,
let me start. Well, first of all, just a direct question. Do you think Donald Trump was right to attack Iran with the
he knows it all
bunker buster bombs?
Well, he did the right thing. History will unfold to see if it was the right strategy. I'm not hedging. The right thing is that if you have an enemy, and certainly Iran is America's enemy, and that enemy is saying we want to kill you, you don't get them in a position where they can kill you with a nuclear weapon. That's not real complicated. And throughout history, I wish to see if it was the right strategy.
Bunker buster bombs.
Well, he did the right thing. History will unfold to see if it was the right strategy. I'm not hedging. The right thing is that if you have an enemy, and certainly Iran is America's enemy, and that enemy is saying we want to kill you, you don't get them in a position where they can kill you with a nuclear weapon.
That's where the conversation should start. And then you should have the other people debate from there. Okay, what is Candace's argument against that? Start from here. We don't need to do all the weird APAC and border immigration, all that. Just why not start from right here?
That's not real complicated. And throughout history, bellicose nations that have threatened other nations have always paid a price. So Iran's paying a price. Now, the problem is that Donald Trump is not widely accepted in the world. And whatever he does brings much more scrutiny than, say, a Barack Obama. But history shows that
Okay, Chief.
the American presidents have acted pretty much in accord to what Mr. Trump did.
Yeah, and certainly this idea that Alexander...
I mean, Trump tore up an agreement that Obama had, and Obama made the agreement, but we can pretend it's the same, I guess.
Ocasio-Cortez tried to put out that somehow this was unconstitutional and he'd gone without congressional approval. You know, as I quickly pointed out to her, almost every decision to order airstrikes by an American president this century, certainly, has been done without pre-approval from Congress.
That's because you have a 60-day window, and that window is put in there because of the alacrity of some situations. You have to take care of them.
Wait, 60-day window to bomb people? Or wait, what?
Put out to her, almost every decision to order airstrikes by an American president this century, certainly, has been done without pre-approval from Congress.
That's because you have a 60-day window, and that window is put in there because of the alacrity of some situations. You have to take care of them. You have to squabble publicly about whether you should get B-2s out of Missouri. I mean, then the enemy knows what you're doing.
What is the... Is he saying that Trump has a 60-day window now to ask Congress if it was okay? Or what? I don't understand this.
So look, I'm not in a business to...
Well, it's 48 hours that he has to notify them and then 69 days for Congress to approve. Is that true? You can do it before for war powers. Oh, do you think Trump is going to do it?
Attack people personally. I know there's a lot of people on the internet that do that, and they make a lot of money doing it. I don't do it. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is simply not smart enough to hold a position of responsibility in America. She's not.
Bill, as we're talking, there are reports that Iran has been attacking US bases in Qatar, in Doha, and others. It's still a little bit murky about what's exactly been going on. Iranian media says Iran's begun its mighty and victorious response to US strike at the weekend. Quote, Iran will not leave any attack on its territorial integrity, sovereignty, and national security unanswered.
Wait, I missed out.
There are...
To hold a position of responsibility, do it. But
and Trump is... Oh, yeah.
Bill, as we're talking, there are reports that Iran has been attacking US bases in Qatar, in Doha, and others. It's still a little bit murky about what's exactly been going on. Iranian media says Iran's begun its mighty and victorious response to US strike at the weekend. Quote, Iran will not leave any attack on its territorial integrity, sovereignty, and national security unanswered under any circumstances. Qatar is saying, as we're talking, which is Monday night, no casualties from attack on US airbase, but it reserves the right to respond directly and in accordance with international law. There certainly have been widespread reports of explosions over Doha. So something is clearly going on here in terms of retaliation. How concerned are you about the potential for this to escalate into a much wider war?
I'm always concerned about that. Everybody should be. But what's a choice? So the mullahs have to save face. They're tottering now. If the army turns against them, they'll be overthrown. Persian people don't want them there, generally speaking. The economy's a mess. They're killers. Why would you want them to lead your nation? The only reason that they have power is because Iran's a police state. They'll pick you up and they'll put you in a camp, or they'll kill you if you dissent against the government. So they have a low-level capacity to fire some missiles at U.S. air bases. The Pentagon was certainly aware that probably would happen. And it's up to Donald Trump to respond. I hope he uses restraint. We could take them out, we being the United States.
Maybe it's because of his background in mainstream media, but from the last two people, Bill O'Reilly seems like the only guy that understands at least like the bare bones of how internationally, how these like conflicts work.
It's in what, 5 hours? All you got to do is knock out their ports and the people will starve to death. And Trump has not done that. Could have, didn't. And he's restrained Netanyahu in Israel. Trump, and I know that to be true.
Has he though? When?
Unique access to the Trump administration, as you may know. Trump has been a restraining voice on Netanyahu. So there are a lot of things in play. You got to figure that the mullahs are about as desperate as any human being could get at this point. They could go at any time, and they're trying to save face with some kind of reaction. That's not going to matter much.
In terms of how wide this could get, Donald Trump posted on Monday a response to the former Russian president, Medvedev. He said, did I hear former President Medvedev from Russia casually throwing around the M-word nuclear and saying that he and other countries would support nuclear warheads to Iran? Did he really say that? Or was it just a figment of my imagination? If he did say that, and if confirmed, please let me know immediately. The M-word should not be treated so casually. I guess that's why Putin's the boss. And I read what Medvedev said. It was quite interesting on two levels. One, that he was suggesting that now the fact that Iran has been developing nuclear weapons should be out in the open and discussed. In other words, it was some kind of secret that we now didn't have to pretend was a secret, which I thought was quite a significant admission, actually, by the Russians. But also just this casual threat that there are plenty of countries out there that will come along and supply Iran with nuclear weapons if necessary. What do you make of that? Should we take it seriously?
Well, you take everything the Russians say seriously because Putin's psychotic. And he threatened to use nukes in Ukraine. But any country that supplies nuclear weapons to Iran is going to be a pariah, have enormous sanctions slapped on him immediately, and will probably go bankrupt. So this is what the Russians do. I mean, they want to create havoc in the West. They say a whole bunch of...
I don't know when he says psychotic. I don't think Putin's crazy, but
stuff, I would be very surprised if any country, including Russia, supplies the mullahs with a nuclear weapon. That would be pretty much saying to the world, F you, and the world is going to reply to that.
What do you make, Bill, of you've been at the forefront of conservative media in America for decades. What do you make of the split in the conservative right in America now, where you've got a very MAGA-oriented,
Oh, maybe he means psychopathic. I'm not really sure.
Out of all these foreign engagements, all these foreign wars, we don't want any of this, America first, America first. And then you have other, possibly more pragmatic members of the conservative right who recognize that occasionally you do have to get involved, whether you want to or not. Where do you sit? Where do you sit? And what do you feel about the rising split, as seen by the Tucker Carlson Ted Cruz interview?
I'm not a conservative. I'm a registered independent, and I take positions that I believe are beneficial to the country, and I don't really care where they come from. So that's.
O'Reilly would support Cruz more than Carlson here, right? My guess would be that he really doesn't like Carlson anymore, but I don't know.
It's my profile. That's what.
They're also both ex-Fox News. Maybe he's got some on there.
I've been successful for 50 years in this business. If a conservative does something ridiculous and foolish, I will absolutely say that. I don't root, I report. So right now, the vast majority of the American people support the bombing of Iran because Iran is an enemy. You briefly mentioned my upcoming book in September, Confronting Evil. Well, Ayatollah Khomeini and Putin are on the cover of that book, along with Adolf and Mao. And then there are 12 other heinous individuals inside. You're not in there, Morgan, so you missed the cut.
Not a conservative, omega law. When O'Reilly says it, I would have to see if his stuff has changed, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's actually being honest there. Unless O'Reilly's changed significantly, my read on him is that he's just like kind of an old school neocon, and especially now because he's not on Fox News, doesn't he? He's like independent on his own now, right? He's probably relatively. My guess is he would be critical of Trump at times. He doesn't have to like buy hook, line, and sinker the MAGA party line. The Trump stuff like really changed. Trump like demands ideological homogeneity more than any other person I can think of in my lifetime. Like he's truly a cult leader in a way that is not like there is no room for disagreement in the Trump camp on basically any major Trump point. Like you saw with the Massey stuff, like Trump will go after you. He'll try to literally primary his own party at a time when Republicans might be looking at one of the roughest fucking midterms imaginable. Coming off an election where they won the popular vote, right? Trump is attacking his own party and doing everything he can to tank the popularity of his own party. So,
wow, phew, thank you, Bill.
But I don't really spend a lot of time on who's fighting who. Yes, it's amusing, but does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. Americans, most of them, are smart enough to make up their own minds. There's about 30% of Americans that are avid supporters of Donald Trump. Most Americans are traditional, and the Democratic Party has gone far left in this country, which is why they're getting hammered. It's not so much their policies, it's their attitude. Americans don't want trans, this, and they just don't want it. It's never going to happen. But when you get into really who's a serious player, there are only a handful of people in the American culture that matter. The movie stars don't matter. Okay, the sports people don't matter. I mean, they matter in their industries, but they don't matter as far as swaying public opinion. That's over. That's gone. The social media destroyed all of that. So nobody gets up in the morning and says, gee, what O'Reilly says, that's what I'm going to believe. They don't do that. What Americans now are searching for
they do with Trump
is fact-based analysis. They'd like to get the truth
Absolutely
without all the garbage,
not.
without all the
That's
ideology,
funny, though,
without all
so.
the hidden agendas. And when you look at these nitwits calling the War Powers Act, the worst is Senator Charles Schumer. What a blanket hypocrite that guy is. And I used to like him because I'm a New Yorker. When Obama bombed Libya, and leading to Gaddafi's death, Schumer supported it and said nothing about it. Hillary Clinton was a cheerleader on that act. No War Powers Act. So that's Libya. This is Iran, Senator. What's the deal here? Can't explain it. And most Americans see through that. They see through the hypocrisy on both sides. And they're rejecting it, thank God.
You, like me, have regular contact with Donald Trump. We knew him long before he ever ran for politics.
Name drop.
We've known him through both his 10 years now. This one, obviously, quite early days so far. How do you feel he is second time round, Bill? How do you categorize President Trump Mark II?
Much better. No, the first 2 years of his first
Jesus Christ, what?
term, he just didn't know, trusting the wrong people. He was listening to too many people.
Okay, never mind. He's fully into the unhinged MAGA camp. Damn.
Donald Trump, I've known him 35 years. He has never misled me. And you know me, I ask direct questions.
Yeah.
So he has never misled me. And because of my association with him, I wrote a book called The United States of Trump, which is widely read in the Communist Politburo in Beijing. And 3 weeks ago, I was invited to address the communists in Beijing, which I did. And it was off the record, but I told them I have to debrief President Trump when I get back to the States, unless you guys throw me in a gulag and I can't get back. But that wouldn't be fun. You don't want to hang with me. So it was an extraordinary experience because what I brought there was a deep knowledge of President Trump. and I could explain to the highest levels of the Chinese government. And their questions were, well, if we do this, what will President Trump do? And I could answer that fairly accurately without guessing. But to be in that position, and I didn't solicit that. They came to me, okay? And to be in that position where I'm a journalist, but I'm also now almost a diplomat. And that wasn't the first time that happened. I was involved with the hostages in Gaza and other things. And I take it very seriously, extremely seriously. And I can't report everything. So when it's off the record, I honor that. But my access to the president has been a very positive experience for me and my followers, because I can pass on information I know is accurate.
Does he always, do you think, tell you the truth, or does sometimes he want to?
Never misled me. Not one time in 35 years. Now, he doesn't tell me everything. I didn't know that on Saturday night he was going to go in and wax the Iranians. I did not know that, okay? Because I'm not on the phone with him every day. I never call him, by the way. I don't intrude. All right? If he calls me and asks my opinion, I give it to him, like I did with Barack Obama and Bush the Younger. They both solicited my opinion as well. But never has Donald Trump said one thing to me that didn't happen or was not accurate.
How do you think he would like to be remembered by the end of this second term as a president?
As one of the greatest presidents. He's all over me for confronting the presidents, the book I have out now. He's all over me on that book. He goes, where am I in the rankings of the presidents? And I said, yeah, it's undetermined. You got 3.5 years. You could screw up beyond belief. You could be down there with Andrew Johnson or his cousin Lyndon Johnson, both disastrous presidents. Or if the tariff thing works, if you can rework the economy so that the American people wages rise and you can impose peace upon the world, then you're going to be in the top 10. So that thing is, but he wants to be on Mount Rushmore. There's no more room, but he'll buy his own house. Put his face up there.
He will. Bill O'Reilly, always great to have you on our session. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Piers.
Got some bad news. Apparently, the technologist Edward Korenstein, a key operative in Elon Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency, who's gone by the name Big Balls online, has resigned. The White House tells Wired. RIP. We'll miss you, Big Balls.